Yo guys, what's up? This is Samuel, and today we're having a look at a video by a friendly YouTuber, Star Wars fan, Star Wars Theory, I think his channel is called. And I'm watching a lot of this stuff recently because I'm rewatching the original 6 movies, and for me, this is like where the story ends. All this other stuff which came out now, like The Last Jedi, is an embarrassment. I was so bored of it and so disappointed of it. So recently, I'm just like watching a lot of people talk about it and give their 2 cents, especially specialists like this person. They really know what they're talking about. They're behind it. They're reading the stuff and everything. So they're good sources. And I agree with a lot of them, I have to say. Like, really, really, really agree. It's one of the saddest story in media history, in film history. The decisions that were made, especially with Jar Jar Abrams and Ryan Johnson, it's absolutely unfathomable for me. It's just so hard to understand how you can have this great license and all the possibilities, all the world, all the money in the world, and then Kathleen Kennedy makes those decisions that are just nonsensical. They don't make any sense. There's absolutely nowhere in my world this is a good decision. The Jar Jar Abrams and Ryan Johnson. If you look at their filmography and what they worked on, I would just not, let them near the Star Wars license. Simple as that. Like far, far away. They should stay far, far, far away. And I think despite the acquisition, they should have involved George Lucas a lot more. So recently it came out that George Lucas is not really happy with what happened. And who's he to be blamed for that? Like, imagine your life work is getting destroyed because of one decision. You thought, look, this is a friend. I know Kathleen Kennedy. I'm gonna trust her. I know her since 40 years or 30 years, or I don't remember what he said. I'm gonna trust her. I know that they're gonna follow and do the right thing. And they completely screwed it up. And this is just not like, there is no debate about that, really, in my opinion. Look, you can say, like, you can quantify it differently. You can say, okay, it's that much of a fuck up. Or you can say, it's that much of a fuck up or something like that. You can say it's more or less of a fuck up, but you cannot deny that this is a total failure. It is a total failure, Everybody is on the same page except the outlets that are bought or owned by Disney, like ABC and all those companies who are constantly, promoting Jar Jar and his gang of terrible filmmakers and writers like Ryan Johnson. Like this guy, did you see him in the videos next to Mark Hamill? He knows that he did shit. He knows it exactly. Look at his gestures. Look at his mimic. Like, you cannot tell me that this guy doesn't know what he did. What he did to the characters, what he did to the story. He's like, he's incapable. It's not like that they had any animosity towards Star Wars. They really believe that this is a good thing, what they do, with all their agenda, bullcrap, etc. But let's listen a little bit to what this dude has to say.
Because, of course, there's just everyone's going to have an opinion of Last Jedi was this, Last Jedi was that.
Yeah, Last Jedi was an embarrassment.
At the end of the day, you guys know that I wasn't a big fan of the film, but I've never been.
Who was? It has a rating of 42 on Rotten Tomatoes. From the not fake rating. So, who exactly was? You need to be almost brain dead to like The Last Jedi.
One to be like, just berating it, hating it, or, just praising it like it's God's gift. But in this,
it's incomprehensible. How could anyone love it? Like, I could understand like that you're, yeah, it's maybe not the worst thing that has been produced in human history, but like maybe in the top 5 of the worst things that humans produced in all of history, next to the atom bomb and AIDS or something like that.
in this video, I feel like I'm going to be a little more frank, especially now that I know this information. So, at some point in the process, George Lucas told me that he had completed outlines for 3 new movies. He agreed to send us 3 copies of the outlines, one for me, one for Walt Disney Company Senior Executive Vice President Alan Braverman, and one for co-chairman Alan Horn, who'd just been hired to run our studio. Iger recounts, Alan Horn and I read George's outlines and decided we need to buy them, though we made clear in the purchase agreement, so in the contract, that we would not be contractually obligated to adhere to the plot lines he'd laid out. So they're like, yeah, these are good stories, we're going to buy them, but hey, we don't have to use them, but we'll buy them anyways. He knew that I was going to stand firm on the question of creative control, but it wasn't an easy thing for him to accept, and so he reluctantly agreed to be available to consult with us at our request. I promised that we would be open to his ideas. This was not a hard promise to make. Of course, we would be open to George Lucas's ideas, obviously. But, like the outlines, we would be under no obligation. Iger then details meeting with Lucas, screenwriter Michael Arndt, and Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy at Skywalker Ranch to talk about their ideas for the film. George immediately got upset as they began to describe the plot, and it dawned on him that we weren't using one of the stories he submitted during the negotiations. The truth was...
This makes the whole story just so infinitely more sad, because we know there could have been an amazing final to the Star Wars story and everything, or an amazing continuation. This is like super, super saddening. Really, it's super saddening. And I also prefer the original three movies, the first three movies, episode 4, 5, and 6. Obviously, they're like the most genuine, the most original, the best, the most cultural impact, the most everything. But then episode 4, 1, 2, and 3, I have to admit, I love them. I know they're not perfect, and I know it's sometimes cheesy, but that was state of the art back in the time, and I think they are great, and they do a great, they make a circle with the story, with Anakin and everything, so I really like it, and no way, compare it, okay? Compare The Last Jedi and The Phantom Menace, and you will find new appreciation for The Phantom Menace, I promise you that.
Was Kathy, The Force Awakens writer-director J.J. Abrams, Alan, and I discussed the direction in which the saga should go, and we all agreed that it wasn't what George had outlined. George knew we weren't contractually... This just makes me so upset, dude.
It makes everybody so upset. This is like the most upsetting story for any Star Wars fan. This is like, everybody's like, what? Now we find out that there was actually a plotline by George Lucas, and they could have... I mean, why didn't they take that and, augment that one? Instead of that, they just... What they did... The recently released game, Fall of the Jedi, is 100 times better, story-wise, than the Star Wars movies. The new ones. Weird, isn't it? Yeah, I know.
Since I was a little kid, since I was a little boy, and it was all under George Lucas's reign. And it was his story, man. Like, it just really makes me upset. George knew we weren't contractually bound to anything, but he thought that our buying the story treatments was a tactic promise that we'd follow them, and he was disappointed that his story was being discarded. I'd been so careful since our first conversation not to mislead him in any way, and I didn't think I had now, but I could have handled it better. I should have prepared him for the meeting with JJ and Michael and told him about our conversation.
So, basically, everybody who is involved in the original Star Wars films is totally pissed. Mark Hamill, one of the greatest voice actors of our time, he's rightfully pissed. Now we know, and he didn't make a secret out of it, He was under no obligations whatsoever. He had some certain NDLs, and they prevented him from disclosing some things, but everything what the man could say, he did. He made absolutely clear that he despises Rian Johnson, that he despises Jar Jar Abrams, and that he despises the new plotline. It just doesn't make sense. And he makes it so clear in a lot of conventions and when he talks. And George Lucas probably signed an NDL preventing him from really being open about that. Who knows? Imagine maybe if the man could speak freely. Maybe we'll, at one moment we will hear
that we felt it was better to go in another direction. I could have talked through this with him and possibly avoided angering him by not surprising him.
It
Iger
really
then
reminds me on this Mark Hamill story where he said, "Hey," he basically said exactly this.
admits, now in the first meeting with him about the future of Star Wars, George felt betrayed. And while this whole process would never have been easy for him, we'd gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start. Disney's sequel trilogy ultimately
This is the father of Star Wars. We are talking. They are disrespecting George Lucas. That's just like insane. Are they fucking out of their mind? What makes them think to not at least consider or implement the key elements of the story, to not fuck it up so badly as they did, while
incorporated
weirdly believing that they did something great just because they made a lot of money at the box office, which is, you know, with this franchise, it's almost impossible to fail with a big movie.
ideas that resembled Lucas. Lucas once envisioned a female Jedi Padawan, Kira, eventually materialized as Daisy Ridley's Rey, and an aged and exiled Luke Skywalker, played by a returning Mark Hamill. The story between an in-training Rey and reluctant teacher Luke in Rian Johnson's Star Wars The Last Jedi was inspired in part by Lucas's original concepts with the Jedi Killer character, that's Kylo, character imagined by Lucas earlier being realized as the Force Awakens villain Kylo Ren. Yeah, that has nothing to do with The Last Jedi. Lucas commented on his plans for the sequels in 2018. As Lucas told it, the trilogy was going to get into a microbiota world, which is true. George Lucas, so basically Star Wars, from what I have read and understand, Star Wars started out with a narration by the Wills. And these were, if you guys remember the Wills, the Clone Wars episode, this is who Qui-Gon learns. These beings are like these ascended beings. They're like priests, pretty much. They're like kind of like god figures. And they were watching the events of the Skywalkers kind of on their TV, or they were learning about them, which had already taken place in the past. That's why Star Wars says a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, because it's supposed to be from the narration, or from the actually at least point of view of the Wills, of these ascended beings.
That's so mind-blowing. I didn't know that kind of story bit. Really interesting.
I call them Wills, and the Wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force, Lucas said. If I'd held on to the company, I could have done it, and then it would have been done. Of course, a lot of the fans would have hated it, just like they did Episode 1. No, we didn't, George. Those are just... No, we didn't.
That's amazing. That's the first... I don't know, like, I didn't hear a lot of people standing in for the Phantom Menace. And I thought, like, I'm, like, the guy who everybody will, like, say, like, ha, look at that guy, he likes the Phantom Menace. And I love the Phantom Menace. I'm telling it to you straight out. I love the Phantom Menace. I love the fighting scenes. I love the devotion of the characters. I love the cast. I love almost everything. I know it has its flaws. It has its story flaws. It has its production flaws in a way, but then it's also so beautiful in another way. And I love the characters, really. I love Obi-Wan. I love pod racing. I love Anakin. I was crying most of the time when they story exposed Anakin Skywalker for the first time, because it's such a grand scale of a story, you know, like this person, you know, like he becomes Darth Vader and everything. It's a touching story, and I love it. And as I said, no comparison whatsoever with The Last Jedi. The Phantom Menace is much better than The Last Jedi. There is almost no comparison. It would be like, there is no comparison, period.
But at least the whole story from beginning to end would be told. Disney next releases Star Wars The Rise. Yeah. Then there's more. I'm going to make this...
Imagine George Lucas doing the next trilogy. Just imagine it for a moment. He's still alive. He could do it.
Into like a bit of a longer video. Disney CEO Bob Iger reflects on George Lucas's disappointed reaction to Star Wars The Force Awakens. So this is now when The Force Awakens was coming out. Here was George's reaction. Recently, Iger shared the story of Lucas' reaction to Star Wars The Force Awakens upon his first screening. The CEO chose to include the anecdote in his latest book, Iger's The Ride of a Lifetime. Blah, 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 we know the rest. So it's coming from there. According to Lucas, there was nothing new about the film which caught his eye or interest. In each of the films in the original trilogy, it was important to him to present new worlds, new stories, new characters, and new technologies. In this one, he said, there weren't enough visual or technical leaps forward, which is true. It was literally, if you look at The Force Awakens, not that it was a bad movie, I enjoyed it. But it was literally episode 4, 5, and 6 squeezed into one film with new characters. We'd intentionally created a world that was visually and tonally connected to the earlier films to not stay too far from what people loved and expected, and George was criticizing us for the very thing we were trying to do. Yeah, because you botched his story. Of course he's going to criticize you. While Lucas might not have been a fan of the film to start, Iger is wholly supportive of The Force Awakens. The CEO says J.J. Abrams did the near impossible, which J.J. is a great director, I think, by bridging the previous Star Wars trilogies.
No, he's a terrible director. This is where I divert. J.J. Abrams is a terrible director, and he should be nowhere near the licensed period. I really believe that. If you look at his filmography, sorry, I know there are some connections to Marvel Productions, etc., but no, sorry, nothing in this grandeur and in this scale should come near this person, period.
Was to come for the franchise. Nowadays, Disney has put a focus on Star Wars even outside of the big screen. In a matter of months, the company will see The Mandalorian debut on Disney+, which I think is going to be great because George was a part of it, and so is Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. So these three people I think should be in charge of Lucasfilm, and I think they should be writing the stories going forwards.
Didn't watch The Mandalorian, but I'm gonna watch it because I heard a lot of good things about it. And this is where this video ends. I think I gave my 2 cents. Probably will make some people angry or upset. I don't care. I love Star Wars, and I really dislike the decisions Disney made with the movie for the most part. And Rian Johnson, dude, you're gonna have to live with this for the rest of your life. Kathleen Kennedy, the same thing. I wonder how those people sleep at night with all those hate mails they get on Twitter. Well deserved, by the way. Anyways, guys, subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell button if you want to get notified about new videos. And also let me know what you think about this whole debacle, about this whole Star Wars debacle. Do you think their movies are all cool and dandy, or do you think they're all like I do? Let me know in the comment section below. Let's have a conversation about it. See you guys in the next video. Booyakasha!